Welcome back, everybody, to day 4 of Foundations of Programming. We are going to be touching up on JavaScript today. Today's going to be the JavaScript crash course. Now, this is a brand new lesson that we will be covering. I just finished it quite literally 10 minutes ago. Um, Before, we used to have what was the Python crash course. Now, the Python crash course was because in the past, our introductory course or our self-paced programs were all based in JavaScript. I'm sure some of you sitting here or those of you who are watching from home have seen that PDF file. You guys click on the link and it sends you to problems that don't exist no more, right? Our self-paced JavaScript course is really broken. Uh, the curriculum's there, but the examples are no longer present. Um, that's an issue from the website that we were hosting our programs or our problems on. They used to be free, right? Their business model was free. You can make as many replets as possible, and then they changed their business model like a year ago, and they limited how many replets you could have to 3. And we had like 50 questions on there. They just deleted everything. Instead of like archiving our replets or letting us know, they kind of just changed their business model. And if you had replets saved in there, they were all deleted. So that sucked. And there was no way to recover them. So that was broken for a while. So we ended up, creating a new intro to coding self-paced, which we just piloted out recently a couple of weeks ago. I want to say 2 weeks ago, which we talked about in a previous lecture that you guys are all encouraged to check out if you are still struggling with Python or basic Python concepts. But because we switched over to a Python driven introductory course, that means that as you guys are coming into the Foundations of Programming course, you guys already know Python, but you don't know JavaScript. So, we will get to week 1 and we start talking about APIs and we start building stuff with JavaScript, and everyone's like, Roger, I don't know JavaScript. So I was like, oh shoot. So I got updated. And I did. So this is the very first time that we have the JavaScript crash course. There might be some issues here or there, so please bear with me if there's any typos, if there's anything that might be out of scope. Uh, um, we'll figure it out. You guys are my guinea pigs, and then we'll just improve this as we go. I still left here the Python crash course um, curriculum if you want to see it. Really, it's not much of a curriculum. It's really the exercises. I just converted them into the JavaScript version. If you want to check this out later, the curriculum, as you may have noticed, most of the curriculum in Foundations of Programming is actually built in PowerPoint. Um, I usually have PowerPoint slides. We talk to the PowerPoint slides, and then we move towards VS Code, and we do the exercises that we have in the curriculum in VS Code. I'm shifting away from that. I no longer want PowerPoint slides. I'm trying to shift so everything is all in a repository with READMEs. Um, it is in progress. I only teach this course 3 times a year, so when I work on it, it's very limited. So bear with me. But because of that, we don't have PowerPoints for the JavaScript crash course, which is fine. Everything is going to be here in the repository for you guys. So what I need you guys to do is I need you to open up the curriculum in VS Code. And you should be somewhere like this, how you see in my terminal, in where all the folders are located at. And what you are going to do is type in the command of git pull origin main. And what that is going to quite literally do is going to pull all the updates from the original repository. And it should populate on your VS Code. Now, I will give you a fair warning. This might delete some previous work that you guys might have had in previous lectures, but that's fine. We're probably not going to touch it ever again. So don't worry too much about it. But git pull origin main will pull the original changes. If you don't like the fact that you lost your work, that's cool. We can rebase earlier. We can go back to your previous commit at an earlier time, save the work, and then do this again. But for now, let's just go ahead and pull that work so we can start messing around with some JavaScript. And once you guys all have the new lesson 4, let me know. The new lesson 4 should have a README that says JavaScript crash course for Python developers, which is you guys, as well as the folders of coins, count letters, Hellstone, and number guess. These are going to be the assignments that we'll be working on by the end of the crash course. When you guys are good to go, give me a thumbs up. Thomas, let me know because you don't have camera on.
Yep, all good.
Coolio. Awesome. So this is a pretty lengthy crash course. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get started straight into JavaScript. Right. So JavaScript, because this is a crash course, we're gonna go fairly quickly. But really, as I mentioned to you guys before, for those of you who have been through the introduction to coding with me, uh, if you know one language, you can learn every other language. The concepts pretty much stay the same. What changes is the way that you write them, right? The syntax, the grammar. And you're going to see that here. Everything that I'm going to talk to you about today, you will see the Python and the JavaScript version. So you can compare it and contrast and see the differences between them. But uh, it should be fairly easy to pick up. Some changes are a little bit uh, less noticeable, where some will be more completely different. And you'll see that right here. The first one is the print statement, right? In Python, we're so used to using the print statement to print out something in our console, right? Our output. Um, in JavaScript, this changes. We now have console.log, right? Console is referring to your terminal. And then, we're going to log the word of hello world. Now, in Python, the way that you run a file would be using the Python command or Python 3, right? Followed by the Python file. We learned now that earlier in our lecture that we use the node command, right? So you say node and the name of the file. We can also run outputs using the interactive shell. We saw this recently by typing in the command of Python, right? That open up that shell on your terminal, and you can run Python code here, like Python hello world, and you can see the output. Now, uh, to have the console log work, you can either use the node command to run the Python file, as I mentioned earlier. And another way is by using the console tab. The console tab is the other way that this is done. And I can show you that. You've already seen it, actually. But if you press F12, it'll open you straight there. Or you can do it the same way that I've been showing you, which is right-clicking, clicking inspect, and then at the very top, right, if you guys remember the dev tools, we've been using elements. But to the right of elements, there's another tab called console, right? This is what the console log is referring to, right? This is really just another version of the terminal. And you can use this and type in code like hello world. And when you press enter, it's going to quite literally run the JavaScript code, right? So you are able to use the console within your browser. It's another way that you can run JavaScript code straight from your browser. Do you have any questions? Right on. All right. So key differences: JavaScript can run in the browsers, right, using the client, or using Node.js, which is going to be your server side, while Python typically only runs server side or in desktop applications, right? Also, notice the fact that it's just written differently. Now, output and display. Uh, let's go ahead. I'm going to make a test file here. We'll call this JavaScript example.js so I can see my code run if I need to. You guys don't need to do it, but so you guys can test stuff out. You guys can definitely have that open up here. But let me also open up the Python one. Python example.py. Let's look at this code snippet here in Python, and let's look at the JavaScript code snippet. Now, this should give me something similar for both of these. CD lesson 04, Python, Python example.py. We see hello world, name Alice, age 25, and then we do node of JavaScript example. We see this, right? Now, notice how they're written though. Uh, for the print statement, that stays the same. Where's it at? Print score. Name Alice, age, sep equals negative. Okay. Right. So for the Python example, they use this argument called sep as a parameter to add the separation between score and 95. And when you say console.log, let's go with score. We'll have to add this here directly and 95. I think it's the same thing. And this is actually something very new for me too. As that was in the curriculum, there's gonna be a couple things here that pop up in Python that I had to learn myself too, which is pretty cool. So the output is fairly similar. You are able to add stuff like here, like the argument, but nothing changes. You're able to change print statements just like Python here, as you saw before. Nothing here changes. One thing I do want to note is that you might see some semicolons here, right? Semicolons is not mandatory in JavaScript, but it is something that you're going to see in other code snippets. So you can add semicolons to JavaScript if you want to, or not. It's not going to give you an error. If you plan to use languages like Java later in the future, it might come in handy to get used to using semicolons, because languages like Java will always have to be always make you use the semicolons, right? Your Java files won't work if you don't use Java, the semicolons. Not to get confused, right? JavaScript and Java are not the same thing. Um, JavaScript was created after Java. Whoever created JavaScript really liked the name of Java and wanted to take advantage of the popularity that Java had at the time. Which is why when he created the language of JavaScript, he added the term Java before it. These are two different languages. He pretty much just rode on the popularity of the name Java to um, to make his language, you know, take off, if that makes sense. So be aware that Java and JavaScript are not the same thing. I say that because I thought that myself when I first started for a while, and that was embarrassing. Uh, 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 um. So JavaScript does not have a direct equivalent to Python set parameter. Not a huge thing. It's just noteworthy to know. The print statements for Python is print, and JavaScript is console.log. Now let's talk about formatting. Specifically, we're going to talk about string interpolation, right? So string interpolation is when you are able to add a variable into a string and then print it out, right? Uh, for those of you who went through the intro to coding with me, you see this already, and it looks very similar to like this, where we use the F keyword, which is short for formatted, right? Uh, when we want to print a format string where we can add a variable within the string to make it dynamic, you prefix it with the F keyword, right? This lets Python know that there might be a variable added within the string itself. Now, once you actually get to the part of the string that you're going to be adding that variable, you enclose it with curly braces. This lets Python know that with whatever within the curly braces is not to be taken literal. It's going to be a variable that holds some kind of value, right? Ignore this one. This is just a different way of doing it. This is new to me as well. Now, in JavaScript, that changes a bit. We no longer use the F keyword. Instead, we use the backticks, right? So the backticks are on your tilde button to the left of your one, right? So it's going to use the backticks to represent a formatted string. And additionally, where you would put the curly braces for your variables, you need to prefix it with the dollar sign, right? So two things change here. You do not use the F keyword. You use the backticks. And the curly braces require the $ prefix. So, have any questions on the changes between Python or JavaScript? So once again, the format here that you see here, this is new to me, but it was interesting to know. Biggest things to note here really is just the backticks and the $ that changes. Now, before we move on, I want to note another thing that you might see here that's new. In Python, Python uses dynamic typing. Now, what does that mean? In Python, you're probably used to just creating a variable by just giving it its name and assigning it a value. Uh, JavaScript, it's a little bit different. It's not as strict as the language of Java, but it's not as lenient as the language of Python. When you create a variable, you have two ways of doing it. Did I skip it, or is it later though? I guess it is. Uh, in JavaScript, you need to start your variable with one of two keywords. One is the let keyword or the const keyword. For example, if I want to create Alex's name, I would say let name equals, and I would say Alex areas, right? Or in Python, I wouldn't need this let keyword. Now, there's also the other keyword that I mentioned, which is const. Const name two, I'll say this one, name one, is equal to Thomas Linkford, right? These are two different ways that you can declare a variable, right? Python doesn't have this. You don't have to prefix any of this to create a variable. You just write the variable. Now, what are the differences between these? Well, the difference between these is that the let is a mutable keyword, while const is an immutable. And you know that because the const is short for constant, right? Constant, it constantly stays at that value. It does not change. Now, why would you use one or the other if the variable is meant to not change, right? That's what the mutability means, whether it can change or not. Um, Typically, you might want to add it to like a list if you don't want to have like new items added to it. If you don't want people to change it, you would make a const. A very simple, a straightforward value that you might have the keyword const would be something like gravity, right? If you try to create a variable to represent gravity, gravity doesn't change, right? Pi doesn't change. Values like that would probably hold the keyword of const. Everything else that is likely to change or you might change later, or you don't really care what the value is, you'd give it the prefix of let, right? So be aware of that. You're going to see both of these very often. Nowadays, you might see const more often than anything. Apparently, it's become pretty trendy that most things will start off as const, and you would make them let when needed. Apparently, it's become like common practice now that everything should be like immutable unless you need it to change later. That seems to be the trend these days. Uh, I say that seems to be the trend because I don't use JavaScript often. I'm typically more working with Python. Uh, Now, another thing that you might see is going to be var, but this should be very rare nowadays. This was becoming uh this was not a thing or was starting to not be a thing when I started learning JavaScript. But var is short for variable, so you might see this where you might have like var name is one and equals Tony, right? So this is a thing these days, or it was a thing in the past. I wonder if it gives me an error if I highlight over it. No, it's not giving me an error. Var for variable, right? That's what it's short for. This is the old way of declaring variables, is the prefix of var. You chances are you probably won't ever see this, but if you're ever looking at old documentation, old code snippets on Stack Overflow, and you see it, just know that's what it means. Any questions?
Yeah, real quick.
Sure.
Th It might be later on. I don't know if we're gonna cover it or not. But is const going to be considered a global, or is it just per scope?
Per scope. What do you mean per scope?
Like, you know how each block has its own scope, like loops are their own scope within a
Right.
function, which is in its own scope. So say we have a loop in a function, and right after the function declaration, I create a const counter, or not counter, but end goal. And then within a loop, can I call that const, or will it say, I don't know that and need to redeclare it, or will it inherit the scope?
This whether it's const or lets doesn't affect the scope of the variable. It just affects the immutability as far as I'm tracking.
Okay.
Yeah. It should just be mutability. We'll talk about scope in a bit, but scope should be pretty similar. I think there's a small little change you can make with scope here in uh one of the I think Python you can. But scope's pretty much the concept stays the same. Basic arithmetic. So the arithmetic stays the same. Oh, my bad. Not arithmetic, basic assignment. I can't read today. So I guess it did came later. I just skipped over it. So here it is, right? So uh we have let, we have const, and we have var. Uh, let can be reassigned, const cannot be reassigned. And then we no longer use the var. See here, it says avoid in modern JavaScript. This is one of those that is no longer present. And another thing to notice here is the naming convention. Probably one of the first things I should have covered. Naming convention in JavaScript is different than in Python. In Python, you're used to snake case, right? Where we separate the different types of words with underscores. We don't do that in JavaScript typically. Typically, when we create a variable, you start lowercase, and then the every second word or every the word that comes second and then after is going to be capitalized. Notice the term user name, right? The N is capitalized. User age, A is capitalized. Is student, so on and so forth. So every word that would come afterwards would be capitalized, but the first one isn't. That's what we call camel case, right? Um, so be aware of that. Now, is that a hard rule? Will it mess up your code? No, absolutely not. We call it, it's a naming convention for a reason. It's just because every language wants to be a little unique. But you're able to differentiate what type of code you're working with very quickly using that. But typically, how you write your code is going to be dictated by where you're working, right? Think about the military. We had SOPs, right? To the different ways that we did things, whether it's like our battle drills or whatever. There's the way that the field manuals tell us to do it, and then there's a way that your unit might be doing it. Uh, so be aware that things change depending on where you work and the team that you're working with. So if they want you to code a certain way, that's the way you're going to code because that's the standard for our team. Uh, right? So just don't be hard set in that rule, but I would start getting used to working with like different naming conventions when you're working with JavaScript, and then change it when you're working with Python. If wherever you work decides to tell you, nope, even though that's Python, we don't use snake case, we use camel case, then that's what you're doing. Too easy? All right. So differences between what we just talked about, Python, no declaration needed, while JavaScript requires either let, const, um, to declare what you're using. Now, scope, right? So, scope and how to separate code blocks, right? In Python, we use the colon to specify the start of a code block, right? Notice here we have Python. We're defining a function. We started off with the keyword of def. We know that def is short for define. We give it the function name, open the parentheses, and then we start the code block with the colon. When we go to the next line, it automatically indents to the right the four spaces. In JavaScript, this changes. The keyword that we use changes. Instead of def or define, it changes to the keyword of function, right? The entire word of function is what we use. After the keyword of function, we continue like normal until we get to the end, where instead of using the colon, the way that we start and end a code block is by curly braces, right? So notice here we have the start is the first curly brace. We go to the next line and we continue our code block like normal. And then when we're ready to end it, we end it with the closing curly brace, right? This specifies the start and the stop of where our code block is. And we typically have the opening one, the first line, and the closing one is in the last line on its own for readability, right? So any questions about how functions are written or how the code blocks start and where they stop?
For JavaScript, what would you use? Is return the same?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Would you put you'd put return within the curly braces?
Yes.
Okay.
All
So
right.
in Python, when I'm establishing a global, I just put global in front of it, and it makes it a global variable.
Yeah, this is one of those things that was new to me. I did not know this. So that was interesting. Apparently, yeah, you could do that. I was not aware of that. This was brand new to me, so I can't really speak too much about it. But it was
And
something pretty cool.
that's regardless of where it is on the code line. Like if it's outside of any blocks standing alone, it wouldn't be global automatically unless you did that.
Yeah, if you didn't add this keyword here, this will not be a global scope. It would make it local,
Okay.
just like how you see this and this.
Got
Uh,
it.
you can give it a try too as well. Open up your Python example file and put it in there.
Um, are we going to go over arrow notation because that really confused me previously?
We can, but not right now.
Okay,
We could definitely go over it, over a what you call it over a
break or
break.
something. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
this is a crash course. I'm just gonna go over like how it's done in Python and JavaScript, so you guys can give it a try when we go into it. All right, data types. Data types don't change, right? They're pretty much the exact same. There might be some small differences. You'll see what I mean. But Python, we know how numbers are, specifically integers, whether they are whole numbers or floating point. Oh no, what am I doing? Floating point numbers that stay the same. Same thing with strings. Uh, there's a small change in the string. In Python, if you want to make a multi-line string, we've seen that we use uh, the three double quotes. In JavaScript, we use the backticks, right? That can give you a multi-line string. Booleans changes. For Booleans in Python, we're so used to using capitalized T and capitalized F for our Booleans. That's not a thing here. In JavaScript, this has to be lowercase. Typically, your console will tell you when you'll get an error. It'll tell you that did you mean true, and it'll be like capitalized or lowercase. It'll be able to identify that issue. But that's one of the changes in our data types that JavaScript's booleans are lowercase, unlike Python that they haven't capitalized. Are none types in Python. Uh, you're probably used to the keyword of none. When something isn't assigned to it, you'll get none returned to you. In JavaScript, you have two different lacks of data, really is what we call it. You might get the keyword of no or undefined, right? No is the absence of data, and then I believe undefined is actually pretty similar to that as well. But you'll get something very similar to this, no or undefined. Or Python, you got none. And then the another helpful one that I really enjoyed in Python is the keyword of type, right? So you're able to check what data type something is by using the keyword type, whether something's going to be of integer type, string, uh, dictionary, so on and so forth. If you were able to do that in Python, you could do the same thing in JavaScript, but instead of just the keyword type, you use type of, right? Type of. Also notice that type of, it's type of space and then what you're trying to check. Where in Python, it was used as a almost like a function, right? You call the type function and then pass in what you're trying to check against. All right. So key differences, int and floats that pretty much stay the same. But we have Python has really the capitalization of true and false. JavaScript, you have no and undefined, where Python has none. So there's some small differences. The biggest one that always gets people is going to be the true and false one. They're so used to capitalizing stuff. User input. This is a huge change. If you start out with Python, you're used to using the input command, right? It prompts the user for input within the terminal. Uh, JavaScript doesn't have a native way of doing that in your terminal, right? There is a way of doing it pretty well in your browser when you're using JavaScript in your browser, and that's the prompt command. Uh, I'll show you how this works later when we use JavaScript in our front end. But prompt command is going to open up a box in the top, like on your browser, where you can add some kind of text, right? Because JavaScript is used a lot on your front end, on your browser. But when you try to run a JavaScript file on your client, right here in VS Code, you don't have something like input that's going to request input in your terminal. Uh, it it uses something very complex, which is creating an interface. Now, this is actually very new to me, so I don't want to speak too much about it because I've never had to do it. Uh, but JavaScript, it does allow you to use something that's similar to the input command, but it makes you jump through hoops, which is using this command here, require, that creates the relie that you can use to create interface. Uh, it's a little confusing. I just learned this myself today, so I'm not too knowledgeable on it. But notice where in Python, all you did to receive input was the input command. In JavaScript, this is everything that it takes to do the same thing that Python can do in one line. So be aware that there is a limitation in JavaScript when it comes to receiving input from the user, unless you're working on the browser where you can use the prompt command. So JavaScript is not the most user-friendly on the server side. It can be used, but it's not meant for it, really. Something to note here is one of the built-in methods already, right? So in Python, if you guys recall, typecasting, right? Converting one data type to another, specifically stuff like int to like a float or an integer to a string and vice versa. We use something like the int wrapper or the float wrapper. Uh, in JavaScript, it changes a little bit. It's now called parse int, right? So they got a string for the age, and then to convert from a string to an integer, they use the parse int command. Uh, it's okay if you don't memorize this command or any of the commands we'll talk about. Really, uh, even I forget them. Sometimes if you ever see me coding back and forth between different languages, I might like pause. I'm like, what was the command for this? I don't remember exactly what was the command in JavaScript and so on and so forth. It happens to the best of us. All right. So changes is going to be the input command. Python has a native way of receiving input, while JavaScript is going to require you to add some additional lines of code. The complexity increases. It does have one for using it on your browser, which is a prompt, but on your server or on your client, it's a little bit more difficult. Now, some string operations, right? These change. Obviously, they change. So everything that you use in Python to manipulate strings, for the most part, they change in JavaScript, right? Look at the lower and upper for Python, right? For the same text, right? If you want to lowercase everything, you use dot lower. In JavaScript, we set two lowercase, and the way that the method is written is in camel case, right? So two lowercase. Same thing for the upper to uppercase, right? So you can use both methods, but obviously the way that they're written is different in the other language. So once again, right, we're starting to see that for the most part, the concepts are the same. It's really just how you write them. And you will forget these, I promise you. It happens, and that's okay. You'll get better with it at over time. Replacing stays the same, right? Using the replace method. Dot length is one that changes. This one always gets me. I always forget. In Python, you use the length function, right? You call length and then you pass in the variable that you're trying to grab the length for. Where in JavaScript, you use it as like a class method where you call the variable and you end it with dot length. It'll do the same thing, but it's written a little bit different. The accessing of different indexes stays the same. You use bracket notation, so 0, uh, -1. Slicing uh, changes a little bit, right? So this is actually, oh, okay, I was getting confused. No negative indexing. I'm actually not so sure about this one. I have to test out. Let's see.
Yeah, doesn't that describe the final index?
Let name equals ABC. It does define the final index. Console.log name. What the heck? Name is deprecated. Oh, I'm dumb. Let's choose your list. Is it because I'm using -1?
You know, you need to put name dot length in there, -1.
Yeah, in the brackets.
Yeah, in the brackets.
Name dot length.
And the only reason they cross that out, I actually just learned this in a Coursera course, is because it's a name that they don't want you to use because it's too commonly used, I guess is what they said. So there's nothing wrong with it being crossed out right there. It'll still run. It's just they're trying to get you not to use the word name as a variable.
Yeah, I figured. List of letters. Let's try this out. No. B. Do the -1. Undefined. I just realized I've never attempted to get the last index in JavaScript. I'm so
Yeah,
new to.
it's the same as what we said previously. You'll have to put list of letters dot length -1
Yeah,
in the brackets. It's a mouthful.
Yeah.
right on. Hey man, the more you know. Let the text dot length -1. Substring. I don't have never really had to use stuff like this, like substring or slice in JavaScript, but it's interesting to know. But as you can see, Python is a little bit more easier to work with, right? They have that built-in functionality where they make you jump through hoops in JavaScript. Once again, and the reason why Python is the master race in languages. String concatenation. We talked a little bit about this already. Um, we mentioned the backticks with the $sign. The other stuff still stay the same, like using the plus sign. Uh, you can join stuff very similar to how you did in Python. The Python one was a little bit confusing, right? Because we had to like, if you wanted to join stuff at a space, you created a space first, right? You create the string and then you invoke a method on that string, like dot join, and then you can pass in what you want to join in there. um, where it switches it in JavaScript, right? So now it's back how it should be, where I believe where you get the list and you invoke the dot join method and pass in what you want to join it with. Uh, One thing that you'll notice is that they're calling it array, and we should be getting to it in a little bit. Uh, yeah, we'll get to it in a little bit, so I won't talk about it. But the array method does change, so be aware that if you are having issues with using like a dot join method in JavaScript, it's because it's backwards. Subtle changes, but changes nonetheless. Typecasting and conversion. So typecasting, we talked about it briefly. In Python, we had it pretty straightforward. You wrap the item you're trying to cast into the corresponding data type that you wanted to cast it to, whether it was going to be an integer or into a float, or back into a string. It changes in JavaScript significantly, right? We now have to use parse int, parse float, which is a little annoying. Um, if you wanted to do something to a string, right? So notice here that num starts off as an integer, and if you wanted to convert it to the string method, you would think, oh, I guess it would be like parse string. No, it's not. It's num dot to string. This is a way I've never really used these methods here, the number, the string ones. These are more commonly used, these to string and the parse int. Oh my God, why does it keep doing that, dude? Also notice the Boolean one, instead of just short term of bool, you get you have to type out the whole keyword Boolean. Uh I've already had to do this. I don't think I've ever had to convert it to a Boolean, so that's not a big deal. Same thing with the double negation trick. This is something that was new to me too. I've not had to do this. But conversions, typecasting is different. So be aware of that. Don't try to use the int or float or string wrapper on JavaScript because they won't work. All right, before we start data structures, let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Time is 6:25. Let's come back at 6:35, and then we will continue with the class. All right, picking up from where we left off, we're going to talk about data structures, um, lists, and arrays. You've probably heard both these terms. Now, Python likes to call, or really JavaScript likes to call what Python calls lists, JavaScript likes to call it arrays. Now, there is an actual more specific definition to what really an array is, especially if you use languages like Java, C Sharp. Uh, Arrays do have a very unique definition compared to what Python likes to call them as lists. But they're going to work very similar in JavaScript and in Python. JavaScript just calls them something differently. So, in short, list is a collection of different values, right? You probably are used to mixing these values, like having lists that have integers, floats, strings. JavaScript can do the exact same, but it calls it arrays. Now, what I was trying to get at is that arrays typically, when you think about them in the context of other languages, arrays are fixed data structures. Unlike how Python likes to use them, where they can add and remove items dynamically. If you use languages like Java or C Sharp, when you create an array, it's hard fixed to whatever length you give it. So when I create an array of fruits, I have to specify how many fruits should I be able to hold in this array. 3, 5, 10, so on and so forth. And that's set, right? That's set to that length. I can't add more than I declared it initially. Or Python, when you create lists, you can add stuff to it. And you can also do that in JavaScript. So it might get a little confusing, the fact that JavaScript calls them arrays, because you can add things to it and delete things to it. Where Java, C Sharp, they don't let you do that. So don't get confused, just gets called arrays. Really, arrays and lists are the exact same thing in the context of Python and JavaScript. So just be aware of that. Now, the way that we handle them are a little bit different in JavaScript compared to Python, right? Python, we're used to adding new things to a list by using the keyword append. Arrays, we use push, right? We're going to push this to the very end, right? So it does the same thing, it's just called a little bit differently. If you want to add something to the front, you use the keyword of unshift, which I'm going to tell you right now, this is new to me as well. I've never. It surprised me when I was building this curriculum. I was like, some of the concepts I've never had to use, or I've never put myself in a scenario in JavaScript where I had to add them to the front of the list. That just goes to show how little some of these things you need to, how little amount of times you need to use them ever in your career. So in 3 years of me knowing and messing around with JavaScript, I've never had to shift something at the beginning of the list in JavaScript. So that's surprising. Um, Splice, remove one item at index one. So you can't necessarily just use something like dot remove, right? You have to specify I'm gonna splice this off from index one to index one. So it's a little bit more tedious. We talked about length already, and we talked about indices. That stays the same. One thing that will change a little bit if you want to use something like list comprehension, which really I've never seen any of you guys do this. List comprehension is a more advanced way of how to filter out a list or do stuff with a list item. Instead of starting a for loop and then multiplying every item by 2 as you iterate through, we can use something like list comprehension. Show of hands, who doesn't know what list comprehension is? Okay, cool. At least one person. So look at Python. I'm gonna create a list. We'll call it list one is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I wanted to double each one of these numbers by 2, I would do something like this. For num in list one, print num times 2, right? And I would run this, and it would do that. Let's not just print it. I'm gonna create a separate list. I'm gonna say list2 is equal to an empty list, and I'm going to add that item into list2. List2 dot append num multiplied by 2, and then at the end I'm going to print out num1 and no, oh sorry, not num1, list1 and list2, and we can see that we get both lists. One list was the result of me multiplying each number by 2, right? Now list comprehension, I'm not good at it, so I'm copying and pasting it. Don't judge me. List comprehension works a little bit different, right? It lets you shorthand what we just did in place. So instead of having to create an empty list, start a for loop, and then append it to it, you would say something like x times 2 for x in list 1. And then you can comment this out, and you get the exact same thing, right? So we can, instead of creating a list in one line, then having to iterate through list 1 and then append it to the empty list, what took 3 lines, we did it in 1 line in place. So that's what list comprehension is, right? It can be a little confusing. Really, the way to look at it is the for loop is here, and the for loop is here, and what you do in that for loop is to the left side. So it's a little backwards, right? You would think it should be something like, this is why I always get confused, which is why I told you don't judge me. You would think it should be something like for x in list 1, x times 2. No, they completely switched this backwards. I do not know why x times 2 for x in list 1. So that's what list comprehension is. Really, it's just a for loop in 1 line. Make sense? So JavaScript, it allows you to do that, but it uses what's known as a higher end function. And one of those is called a map function. right? So they quite literally take the original list they're trying to loop through. They invoke the .map function, and then within the function, it specifies how to handle that item it's looping through. Make sense? Notice it's actually very similar to how the list comprehension for Python is working. It just uses it within a built-in function already. So it can do
Is
both.
this
Yes.
is this I guess more efficient? Does it help the ru code run faster? Is this what you want to achieve? Is there like a benefit, I guess?
Um, I would say not necessarily like run faster. It's just you're asking me a question like, does Python printing and capitalization make it run faster than JavaScript printing in lowercase? Not it's just how it's built or how they created the language. I can't really give you a direct answer. I will
Okay.
say I think the map version is actually easier to understand. Mo-
Oh, actually, I meant like staying in the same language. I'm not comparing the two languages. I'm saying instead of writing that for loop that you wrote and then appending it to that list, does this shorthand, is it more efficient, so to speak?
as far as I'm tracking, no.
Okay.
It takes the same amount of runtime. It looks neater.
Hmm.
It might make it more confusing to a new developer if they've never seen it. Uh, but it just shortens your code, makes it look a little bit, sleek, makes it look, yeah, like you're using advanced subjects and you're using less lines to do something. But there's no
Benefit?
benefit besides the fact that you use less code from what I see. Performance wise, it's still invoking um big old M, which you don't know
Got
what
it.
that means, but we'll get to it later on when it comes to
Okay.
computation.
Understood. Thank you.
No problem. All right. So next it's gonna be dictionaries. Python calls them dictionaries. JavaScript calls them objects, which can get very confusing because what objects are in JavaScript are something completely different in Python. Python also has objects, but its objects are something else in Python compared to what JavaScript is. JavaScript, although they're called objects, the term that you'll hear will be JSON. JavaScript object notation is the equivalent of what an object would be in Python would be dictionaries, right? And dictionaries in Python are key value pair data structures. JavaScript also has that. Calls it object or JavaScript object notation, JSON, uh, which is the same thing, key value pairs. They're both still identified by using the curly braces, right? So JavaScript will call them objects. So if you hear like a JavaScript object, it's still referring to this. Key value pairs stay the same, right? They're using the curly braces. Obviously, what changes is the fact that the variable still has to have that keyword of let or const. You want to make it let if you want to add stuff to it. Um, Notice that dictionaries, the string is in quotation marks. Here, they're just adding the keyword of name with no quotation marks. So that was interesting to notice. I never even thought about it. I just been writing it, and I just realized it recently. Um, how do
Does
you use? Yes,
doesn't that change if it's like a multi-word key for JavaScript?
you use camel case,
Oh, okay.
right? So, uh, something interesting in JavaScript that you didn't use in Python is how do you access key value pairs in an object compared to a dictionary. You can use dot notation to access a key value pair. Uh, so you can use dot notation like dot email and it'll return to the value for that email. or you can use bracket notation to grab stuff in an object as well, like you did in Python. I will say I don't use this often because I've gotten errors with this. Um, I'm not quite sure why I got an error. I just stopped using it afterwards. I'm not my my expertise is not in JavaScript, so I do apologize for that. But this is a method of grabbing different things. I use it sparingly, especially because of multi-word keys, like Thomas did bring up. So I like just to stick to the bracket notation with the key in here, quotation marks. Also, because I do change between these languages very often, the less differences between them, the better for me. So I just stick to one. You can use this if you want to mess around with it. Pick a method and stick to it. I would recommend. Uh, 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 um, the next thing to note about objects. Remember, in Python, we use terms like keys and values to grab an object like list of the keys or values. Do you guys recall that? Do you guys remember how we grab both keys and values at the same time?
Items.
Dot items. In JavaScript, it's dot entries. Dot entries. I didn't add it here. I should have added it. We only have keys and values here. You need to know that it uses dot entries instead of dot items. Python sets. Uh, I'm not gonna talk too much about them because I've never really used sets in JavaScript. Um, but what really changes here, honestly, is just how you create them. New sets. Um, you require the new keyword and then what you're trying to create. It's technically a set object. Um, it's not native like Python has it like this. Um, you probably won't ever have to create it in JavaScript. I'll be completely honest with you. I've never had to. But this is the equivalent of the same thing for Python. Notice that the add stays the same, but the delete is what changes of how you remove things from a set. Uh, I can't think of a scenario where I've had to use set in JavaScript. But if you did want to, just know that you can. It just changes how you do it. A set is very similar to a dictionary was, if you guys recall that from the intro course for with Python. The difference is that sets do not have key value pairs, right? They are individual items, like you see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's no key to them. Although they both use curly braces, they're two different um, data structures. Sets have to be unique as well. Yes, Thomas.
Oh, never mind. That's just what I was about to ask. Is JavaScript the same as Python in that it
Yes,
removes duplicate values?
correct.
Okay.
Sets do not have duplicate values. They have to be unique values within them. So notice everything else pretty much is the same, right? As I mentioned before, the concepts stay the same. How you write in them is what changes. Some languages have bigger changes or differences between them. JavaScript and Python is not huge changes or small differences, which is why it's very easy to kind of pick up JavaScript if you already know Python. So if you were a little nervous about the fact that you had to pick up two languages and you only knew Python, hopefully this is easing you a little bit, like making you feel better that you're not that far behind. It's easy to switch over or pick it up once you guys start the course. But you will already start getting some time behind the keyboard with it, so that'll be good. Conditional statements changes. This one's I would say is a decent change compared to Python, right? So let's look at Python here. We have if, elif, and else. The changes on these keywords is on the elif change. Instead of elif, we quite literally spell it out. We say else if. Right? elif has always been short for else if. In Python, we shorthanded it and joined together. In JavaScript, we separate the words. It's else if. Now, another thing that changes is just like in functions, that once you start the code block, you use the colon. and JavaScript for a function is switched over to the curly braces. We do the same thing here, right? So here, when we use conditional statements, we're going to put the condition statement inside of parentheses. So notice if age is greater or equal to 18, this condition is put within parentheses. And then we start the code block for this if statement using the curly braces, right? Next, we say else if, then we add the condition again, once again in parentheses, and then we add the curly braces. And finally, we say else, and because else is a fallback, a default that we rely on, we don't have to add a condition, so we don't have any more parentheses here. We just go straight to the curly braces. This will probably be the one thing that's going to confuse you the most when you first start learning JavaScript. I kept messing this up when I first started in JavaScript. Even now and then, I'm like, oh, how do I format this again? I'll dabble with it a little bit before I get it right. You always forget when you get so used to typing like this, it's natural for you to kind of like forget exactly the flow of the if, else, if statements. So biggest thing is to take away from here. There's three things. One is the change of the elif to else if, the parentheses around your conditional statements, and the addition of curly braces over the colons. All right, so three big changes here. Something to note, which is pretty cool. I don't know how often you guys have used ternary operators, but you're able to do an if-else statement in one line. Are you guys aware of that? Right? Take the Python one, for example. Status is going to equal adult. So we're assigning the value to status. It should say adult if age is greater or equal to 18, else minor. So this sets an if-else statement in one line, which is what's known as a ternary operator. This is pretty handy. I've used it a handful of times. I'll use it again later in the course. You can see when it's going to be a good time. The time when we start working with CSVs, I'll use it, which is a pretty helpful tool. This also works in JavaScript, but it's a little bit different. It's a little backwards, right? Where here it talks about what it will set if something happens. Here it's saying if this happens, set this. And then the else, instead of the keyword else, it uses the colon. So age greater or equal to 18, question mark. If so, it should be adult. Else, it'll be minor, right? Unlike Python where it says adult if age is greater or equal to 18, else minor. So I don't know which you guys prefer, one or the other. But point is you can do both of these capabilities in either Python or JavaScript. Make sense? All right. Loops. Loops do change. Loops do change. In Python, we're used to for I in range, and then you pass in the 5, and you can start printing out 5, right? This actually changes a lot. It's a big change. Just like the if-else statements, our condition is going to be put inside of parentheses. So here we have 4, and then we're going to begin the process. We're going to say let I is equal to 0, semicolon, I minus 5, semicolon, I plus plus. What is the same? Well, in Python, we never had to specify what range we're starting off at, right? If you guys recall, whenever you use for I in range, by default, the range understands that it will start at 0. That's a pre-built functionality into the range method. JavaScript isn't doing that. You have to specify at what point do you want to start your range at. That is the first argument that you pass in within the parentheses. Let I equal 0. You have to quite literally set the variable of I, or whatever you want to call it, I, J, or let number equal 0, whatever you want to call this variable, that temporary variable, you have to declare it using the declaration statement, and then assign it the variable you want or the value you want to start at. For a range, it by default already set it to 0. So that's what we're doing here. We're setting the start point, and then we set the condition right off the bat. Right? We're here. We pass in the parameter of 5. So range already knew the one number you give me will be the part I'm going to stop at. We don't have that here. We have to specify what point we're going to stop at, which will be 5. I less than 5, colon, and then we say I plus plus. Once again, the for loop in Python automatically knew that after every iteration, I'm going to increase the value I am on. JavaScript doesn't do that. You have to specify it. So it does that, I plus plus. Does this make sense of how this is structured? All this is done within one parentheses. These different settings are separated with semicolon. So for let I equal 0, colon, I less than 5, and then increase it by 1 after each iteration. Then do the following, which is console.log I. This is the equivalent of this.
I have a question on that.
Mm-hmm.
So I know with JavaScript you can do I minus minus for a decrement. How would you do that in Python?
Same concept. Oh, in Python?
Yeah,
minus equals.
so it's
Oh, are you talking about here in the range method?
yeah.
For I in range of 5. And you want to go downwards. So
Like if you wanted to go 5 to 0, yeah.
5 to 0, you say 5, 0, and then this will be minus 1.
Okay.
Print
Simple enough.
I. Yeah. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Got it.
If you want to go backwards, you have to specify the start point though. Because
So
check
you
it
would
out.
just do your start, your end, and your whatever you want to increment it by,
Start, end, and then step.
or
Is what's-
decrement.
That third one is called step. Because if I don't add the start points and I only add 2 values, what do you think this is going to interpret it as? It's going to interpret that I want to start at 5 and I want to stop at -1. But it doesn't, by default, it's already set to increment. So it doesn't know how to handle it, which is why you see I don't get nothing back in return. Because this is,
Got it.
by default, there is a +1 here. You just don't see it. So you have to add that -1 or that step there if you want to get it to work. Right.
That makes sense.
So yeah, just be aware of that. All right. Okay, so in the for loop for Python, we have a data structure here with items in there. We can iterate through it for fruit and fruits, and we can just print out fruit. Here is similar, but we require the parentheses. So be aware of that. Now, if you want to do something like this, where you have list 1 is equal to 1, 2, no, we'll say A, B, C. For I in range, or for letter in list 1, print letter. I'm able to grab A, B, C. If I want to grab the item and the index, how do I do that?
Or
Enumerate.
Enumerate, right?
Yeah, for K, comma letter, I think, or that, yeah.
Enumerates, and then it has to be, we have to pass in 2 values here for index, comma, letter, prints index and letter, and we can get 0A, 1B, 1C. You don't have enumerate in JavaScript. So how you replicate that? Really, it's as simple as saying like I equals 0, I less than list 1 dot length. It's a semicolon instead of a comma, and then I plus plus console.log I comma list 1 at index I. So you have to do a little bit more menial labor, menial labor. I don't know. English is hard. But you can still accomplish the same concept here. Uh, right, 0A, 1B, 2C. You have to get the length so you know what item you're or how many items you're iterating through, right? Cool. Right on. Uh, uh, while loops don't really change too much either. So here's the while loop for Python, right? You grab a variable set like a counter while count less than 5, um, and then you increase the count. Same concept here. Only difference is you have to put the condition in parentheses, and the count you can do either this or you can do count plus plus to increase the counter, right? But pretty much it's fairly simple. It just differs the fact that you have to add the curly braces like everything else for code blocks and the parentheses for the condition. So small changes. Any questions? All right.
I have a question real quick. So
Yes.
the in statement in Python, when I was doing my live assessment, Guillermo told me that should be of in JavaScript. Is that
Can you say
like
that again?
for
I'm
fruit?
sorry. My old
Like
lady was messaging me.
like yeah, in your for loop,
Uh-huh.
do you have let fruit of fruits? So
Uh-huh.
there's no in statement there in JavaScript. It would be of versus in.
Yes.
Because I was used to Python, so I was working in that when I was doing it, and he was like, "I think you're thinking Python." So that just changes to of. That's the only difference.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have specified that too. That went over my head. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. All right. Basic functions. We covered most of these already. Mm, okay, I think let's talk a little bit more about what Thomas was talking about. So Python, we had two different ways, or it's pretty much one way, but there's some stuff that we could do, right? In Python, where we create a function and we can set defaults in the arguments, right? Age is equal to 25. But we can still override this if we desire to, right? I could call the greet function. Notice it passes Alice. The only one that's required is the keyword of name, because there's no default for this. Age, we preset a default of 25 into the function parameters. So what that allows us to do is to use the greet function without having to pass the age of 25 or any age in general because there's already something for it to fall back on. It does not mean that we can't override this. If I wanted to make her 30, I could make a comma and then pass in the keyword of 30 and it would override it. But we are able to set some default value in our functions in the event we want to have something to fall back on every single time. And then we have the simple function that just takes the parameters like you've known already and returns some kind of value. The expression for functions can change a little bit of how we can create them. We talked about the very first one, the function declaration. So we use the function keyword, the name of that function, and then everything else is pretty much the same. Um, you're able to flip this, right? You're able to flip this as well. Notice here that we do const add numbers. So we create a variable called add numbers, and then we're going to assign it the keyword of function and pass in the parameters it takes. So there's different ways we can declare a JavaScript function. Um, there's no rule right or wrong answer here. I've seen it done multiple ways. So you can do either this one or this one. I see people who try to be a little bit more fancy end up using methods like this more often than anything. Actually, I see this one these days. Uh, where they create a variable, they say equals, pass in the parameters, they use the arrow function to specify that they're creating a function, and then they'll add curly braces if they want to add multiple lines. to give it the value. So there's different ways you can create a function. There's no right or wrong answer. You can use all three of these, right? So don't feel intimidated by seeing something like this. This is a single parameter, no parentheses needed type of function. This method right here only works if you have only one line of code, like they're doing here, where they're taking x and then multiply it by itself, right? So this would not work if you had a lot of line of code to use. So obviously, this is very conditional, depending on if it's a simple function or not. This is another version of that, but this one takes multiple arguments, right? Instead of just the one. So pretty much these are the exact same thing. Then obviously, if you have a function that's going to be very complex that might require more stuff, then you would use one of these as well, right? So different ways of doing them. There's no right or wrong answer for which one you decide to move forward with. Just different things you can do. We're not going to get into Lambda because that's a little out of scope for you guys. That'll be covered in the immersive program, but it is here if you want to look into it. We talked about arrow functions. Filter reduce, I'll just briefly talk over these. This is another high order function, like the map one. The way that they work are different. The map will keep the integrity of the original data structure, where filter will alter the data structure. So these, you might think at first glance when you use these that these are the same thing, like to iterate through a data structure like a list and do something with the items you're iterating through. The way that they work is different. Map will not affect your original one, where filter will. Same thing with reduce. This one is quite literally reducing what's in there. Uh, there, they all three of them, filter, reduce, and map, have their scenarios of when they're helpful. But just be aware that these these are high order functions. You could check these out. These won't really come in handy to you guys until you get into React. Reason for that is once you start getting into React and you're manipulating data structures on the front end, you who soon has anyone seen React or how React works? Okay. React doesn't like to, as you may know, React combines JavaScript, HTML, and CSS in one document, which can get very confusing. So iterating through a data structure to do something with it will not work. You will get an error. So you need a high order function like filter, reduce, or map to do that. So like once again, it won't really matter until you get there. That's when you really need to start messing around with these or understand them. But for now, you can kind of just ignore them for a bit and just focus on the basic stuff. And then if you want a summary of everything, you can kind of scroll down. You can see some key differences of what really changed. Statement termination, code blocks using the curly braces. Comments do change. We use the forward slashes, or we can use multi-line comments by using the forward slash and asterisk on the starts, and then asterisk and forward slash at the end. Variable declaration change, and then the string quotes. Some naming conventions change, like snake case to camel case is a big different ones for variables. Notice that functions also use snake case. Here's a good one that I completely forgot to talk about. Equality. Equality in Python, you only have two ways or one way to check equality. That's the double equal sign, right? So if we wanted to check, let's say num1 is equal to 5, num2 is equal to 10. If I want to check if these two are equal, I would say if num1 is equal to num2, right? What would this return? False, right? If I did that in JavaScript, that will also return false. Now, what if I said if num1 is 10 and num10, if num1 is 10 and num2 is 10, what would this return? This will return true. Absolutely. If I did this in JavaScript, it will do the same. Where it changes is if I had something like this. If num1 was the string of 10 and num2 was the integer of 10. Python will return false. And so will but JavaScript won't. My bad. I'll correct myself. JavaScript, if I compare both of these with a double equal sign, this will return true to me in JavaScript. A JavaScript has an additional equal sign where it's going to check the equality of it and the data type. So be aware of that. And then, and only then, will JavaScript return false to me. So I just want you to be aware that JavaScript it will return to you true if you compare a string of 10 and a number of 10 with using only two equal signs, where Python won't. Python is able to identify that these are two different data structures, and it's going to tell you, no, that's how about because that stuff's false, right? That's false. JavaScript will tell you it's true. It's going to convert it into, or it's really is there an attempt to typecast it into the same data type, and if it succeeds, it's going to return to true. Or Python won't try to typecast it. It'll tell you right off the bat, no, these are two different data structures. So JavaScript has that additional equal sign that's going to check for equality and data type. So be aware of that. That is another key difference in JavaScript. All right. And that's going to conclude our JavaScript crash course. Pretty straightforward. I know it's a lot. It is a lot. Pretty much, I went over everything that you guys went. For those of you who were in the intro to coding course, everything I covered to you guys in 9 days, I just covered to you right now in 2 hours. Actually, less, an hour and a half. Right. You're not going to learn it. Even if I sat here and I talked to you about this for 24 hours, you're not going to learn it all. Only way to learn is going to be through actually coding. So let's get into that. We are going to have a couple assignments. You can try it out by messing around with these Python code snippets I added here. Try converting these into JavaScript and see if they work, or the JavaScript equivalents, right? But really, where we're really going to get the most bang for our buck is going to be also the exercises. So in lesson 4, there's going to be 4 different folders, one for each exercise. The JavaScript file is empty, and the README should have the actual exercise itself. So try to split up your screen so you have something like this, right? Where you have the exercise on the left and the README on the right. Time is 7:17. So what we're gonna do is I want you to give the JavaScript one a try. So we're gonna work until 7:30. At 7:30, I want you to go on a temporary break, come back at 7:40, and at 7:40, we will go over this assignment. Um, Sound good? Right on. I will be here
To
if
do
you
all
have
of the
questions.
assignments.
No, not all of them. We're gonna do one assignment at a time. After each assignment, we'll cover them together and then move on to the next, right? So we can review each one before we advance. That way we can answer questions too.
Gotcha.
So actually, let's go to 7:35, and then go on break from 7:35 to 7:45, just to make sure we have enough time for this one assignment. So our first assignment today is going to be coins.js. All right. Were you guys able to finish? Does anybody want to show their answer? I'll stop sharing.
I think I got
Yeah, I got it.
close-ish. You got it. All right, you go
I
then.
did.
Hey, Tony, killing it out here. Let's see. All right. So we see our function called change. You pass in cents. Okay, everything standard so far. It said let quarters equal cents divided by 25 or 0. Why'd you do 0? Oh, okay. I see what you're doing here. Uh, in case it was less than 20, less divided by 25. Why do you put the pipe?
It just says the or statement. So if it couldn't calculate, it would just push back 0.
Okay. I've never seen a single pipe. I guess I didn't talk about it. And or statement. Um, in Python, we use the actual keyword and or, right, to specify whether one or the other, or both. In JavaScript, we use double pipes for the or, and we use double ampersand signs, right, um, for the and. Um, I've never seen it done one with one pipe, which is actually very interesting. Did it work? I'm assuming it did. Uh,
Yeah, I worked on nickels.
okay. So you're dividing cents by 25 or a 0. And why would it do 0? At what point, what will make it give you or return 0?
If it wasn't divisible by that number.
Okay. So if you were to do 23, is that what you're saying? 23 divided by 25, what would that give you?
It would be a negative integer, or it would be a float, so it wouldn't come out as an integer. It would
Okay.
be like a decimal lower than 1,
Can I see it?
I guess. Yeah. Yeah, you want me to like put it in?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So right now I gave you 3. Okay, your change will be, so I did give you 0. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I actually learned that method in a class that I took through Coursera, so it's just
Yeah, this is
something mixed
actually
up.
super super cool. Uh, I didn't know you could do it this way. The modules definitely works, and it's doing actually something very similar to what the modules do, which is pretty cool. Um, so that's actually you learn something new
Yeah, and I actually
every
use the
day.
modulus for the count here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's cool, man. I learned something myself, which is pretty nice. All right, cool. And then you do the coins, which exactly like you just mentioned, you do the modulus, which is 25. Um, which returns to you the remainder of the division of it, um, to get rid of the quarters, which is awesome. And then you do the dimes, same concept. You go right on. Okay, I think, yeah, you're spot on. Good stuff. I like it. That's a really good solution. I like it. You're the first person I see do it this way, which is nice. Uh, Thomas, did you get something similar?
No, mine wasn't working yet. I, yeah, my solution was convoluted. It was going to end up using recursion.
Sure. So let's go ahead. Tony, stop sharing your screen, please. Thomas, let's see yours because I would like to, this is not only are we learning JavaScript here, but we're still learning to code here. So definitely a good learning experience.
Did I stop sharing? I don't have like the stop sharing button I normally have. I don't know where it went.
Oh, that's okay. I can cancel it for you. Thomas, let's see yours.
Let me see here. And then I was going to work on adding in recursion so that way it called itself. Like I said, over convoluted, I know, but
Uh,
that's just what my brain jumped to, and I was
that's
like,
okay. That's
nah,
okay.
there's an easier way. But then by the time I was like, yeah, I'll start doing this, the timer went off, so I was like, nah.
It's okay. I like seeing it. It's very interesting. Okay. Well, sure, I do see where you're starting to get a little it's getting a little crazy. So the modulus, right? Let's refresh me. What does modulus do, Thomas?
divides it and then pops out the remainder.
Right. So if I were to do something like target modulus 25 and um target is something like, let's say, 24, what would be my response? What would I get back? If it's 25 modulus, if it's
Oh,
target, which is 25 modulus 25, that would give me 0, right? Because there's nothing left over. If I did something like 26 modulus 25, I should get one remainder because they divided evenly and I had one left over. But what happens if the target is actually less than 25? I'm curious.
then it's going to go down to a different branch here.
Right. I would just pretty much checking if something is 0, right? If we were to divide the target with modulus and we got 0 back in return, then we know it is divisible by 25. So then we can divide it by 25
Hmm.
um, and get the remainder. Um, and we can use it to our advantage to figure out if it is divisible by 25. That means there's at least enough numbers in there to um, to give us what we're looking for. So at that point, then we would just divide it and floor it down, right? In Python, it's simple. We can use the double forward slashes to divide and floor. In JavaScript, there's actually a different command for that. Do you know what it is?
Not off the top of my head. I think it's have it in my notes somewhere actually.
That's okay. Let's move forward with your idea, and I can start us off here. I'm gonna stop sharing your screen. Let me share mine and see if we can kind of get on the path here.
I just went and looked
Uh,
at my notes to figure out what that was called. It was called a bitwise operator. I knew it had a name that I hadn't heard before, but that single pipe.
let's do function is change is going to take coins, and then let's make sure everything's working right. Uh, console, we'll say change, and we can pass in 50 here. Where am I in here? Okay, cool. Let's cd into coins, and then no coins just. Okay, cool. So if I were to do something like console, let's put console log here, console.log. If I did return coins modulus 25, I should get 0 returned, right? Because what it does is it gets coins, which is 50, and it's going to divide it by 25 and returns to me the remainder. So if coins is 51, I should get back 1 return because there's 1 left over after we divided this evenly. If we have 74, I should get back 24 because it's 24 left over. I needed 1 more to divide this evenly with the 25 3 different times, right? Cool. If I do 24, I will get something that's not equal to 0 or 1. Um, right? It's still didn't divide evenly. It's not 25. So how do we do this? So first and foremost, we can check if points uh and I might overcomplicate a little bit too. If coins is greater than 25, then I want to check how much is left over remainder. Um, so we could do something like uh how do we do this? We can get quarters is equal to coins divided by 25. But what we're going to do is we're going to use math.floor. is what it is called. All right, so math.floor is the equivalent in Python as doing something like coins divided by 25, where it's going to divide it and do a floor operation where it's not going to give you a decimal, right? So the command for that, it's math.floor, if I remember correctly. So let's see if this works as I believe it does.
Don't you have to declare quarters with like let or const or
You
whatever?
are correct. Thank you. Sorry. As you see, I get rusty with this.
Oh, you didn't need a semicolon, that's right.
Let quarters. Oh, I'm returning this over here by accident. Return quarters. If it's greater than 25, which it is, it should have points divided by 25. Why am I getting an error here? Quarters is not defined. Oh, let quarters. So it's telling me it's not passing actually. There we go. Okay, cool. So it worked, right? So it wanted me to freaking declare quarters beforehand. That's annoying. Uh, so I declare, well, I didn't declare quarters. I create the variable, but I don't assign it a value, so it's empty. And it's only going to get a value uh, if coins is greater than 25. If so, what I'm going to do is I get coins divided by 25 and floor it, which gave me 2, which is good. But let's see what happens when I do 51. It should still give me 2, which is correct, right? Even though this is not dividing evenly, it's still returning 2 to me because it's flooring it. If I didn't have floor, it would give me a decimal, 2.2, right? So math.floor is the equivalent of using that double division uh, in JavaScript. So what we can do is we can say something like this where we check if coins is greater than 25, then we can definitely divide this to get quarters. Let's figure out what the quarters is first, and then we can say something like coins is equal to coins modulus 25. So we can get the remainder after dividing everything by which call it by 25. And then we can come down here and say if coins is greater than 10, and we can do the decimal, I'm sorry, the dimes, right? But you see here, this is how it would work, right? First and foremost, can we even divide this by 25? Do we have enough change to check we have quarters? And if this passes, then let's go ahead, let's get the quarters out of here, figure out how many quarters we have. And then once we do that, we can use the modulus operator to figure out how much change we have left over after taking the quarters into consideration, and then reassigning that to a new value for coins. Does this make sense, Thomas?
Yeah.
Right on. Right here, we can come down here and we can say dimes is equal to math.floor. We can say coins divided by 10, and then we reassign coins to something like coins modulus 10. We do that until we get everything we need. But yeah, that's kind of the route we should have gone. Now, granted, I didn't give you guys this function here, which is fine. The main point is for you guys to kind of go in there and make sure that you can find the equivalent. It prompts the question, well, I can do this in Python. If I can divide and round down, what's the equivalent for that in JavaScript? Which should have made you want to kind of Google, how to floor it and whatnot. Tony, you unmute yourself, so I'm assuming you have a question.
No, I was going to say, so basically that operator that I use in single pipe is called a bitwise OR. So what it does is the same thing as math.floor, unless you get into negative.
I can't hear you. I don't know if it's my mic. Test. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can
Yeah, I
hear
can hear
you.
you.
He cut out for me too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you cut out the last part there.
Oh, I did. Okay, yeah. So basically what it does is it takes the decimal and just drops the decimal portion of it. So
Okay.
it works the same way as floor with positive integers, but with negative integers, you would be one off.
I see. Okay. Cool,
Yeah.
cool, cool. Yeah, definitely the first time I saw it be used, which was interesting. So I appreciate for sharing that experience with me. Thank you. All right. Let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and stop the recording there for today. Let me go ahead and stop